Now that we have our red dot set up, I'm going to go ahead and dive into the actual reticle logic and everything like that, and kind of explain something. So when I say reticle, I'm talking about the SKG optic component. Now this is a optional component, and there are reasons why you might want to use it, but you don't need to. So the reasons you might not want to use it is if you just have a single reticle, it's fixed. You don't plan on having the user be able to say swap out reticles at runtime like you could with the Amazon Special Optic, or say change the brightness, increase it or decrease it, have night vision mode, that kind of stuff. If you just have a, just like this, basically, there's no reason to utilize that component. But if you want to have the ability to kind of do what I just mentioned, then you would want to use my component. So we're going to step through basically both ways of handling it. So the first way is going to be just literally creating a reticle material that is going to replace the existing one and using it as I just mentioned without the component. So that's going to be our starting point. Now, what we can do first is let's actually grab his reticles. So let's head to his optic material, go to the texture maps, and here we have the actual reticle material, or sorry, the reticle texture. And we have 3 of them. So we're going to utilize these 3. So we just need to make the material for it. So if we head over to our tutorial folder, let's create a new folder called Reticles. And inside of here, we want to create a new material instance. So we'll just call this one mi underscore red dot. And there's going to be 3 different options. So let's kind of name them accordingly. So the first one will be outer ring. And let's get this set up so we can very quickly just duplicate it. So we need a master. So what we can do is for the parent, just search for reticle, and you will see the m underscore reticle master. With that, let's select the reticle, and we just want to swap this out with, well, his. So we can go to his texture here and replace. Now that that's done, you can see that it does have a kind of a light green hue to it. And that's because by default, my setup kind of reads different channels, so red, green, and blue. So you can modify them individually, but his is solid white. It's basically just a mask. So what we can do to make this red is just change the green and blue channel color to red. Like so. And now the optic, well, it's red. So that takes care of that. So what we can do now is just create the other 2. So let's go ahead and duplicate. And this one will be center dot. And then there is the cross. So let's make another one and we'll just call it cross. So we'll open up the center dot and cross. And let's replace the cross with this guy. Then let's go to the center dot and replace with this guy. Okay, make sure everything's saved, and there we go. So we have our 3 materials. We can go ahead and close them for now and go back to the red dot. Now, if we wanted to just use the material, no component or anything, we can just simply swap this out with whichever one we've made. So in this case, I want to swap this with the same one. So I'll use the outer ring and replace. As you can see, it's gone because there is now actual parallax. So that is quite large looking. So let's actually decrease the size. So reticle size, we'll have it at 4. And that's a lot better. Okay. So that's how you would do it if you didn't want to use the component. You just literally swap the material with mine and you're done. It's really simple. And you can go through and tweak kind of everything you see here. So now that we have that, let's go ahead and use the component. So all we have to do is just add the optic component. And like with everything else, we have the initialize that we need to make. And then in our case, we're going to want to set up the reticle settings. So we need both of these. So to begin, let's head to our data folder, go to initialize, and let's create a new data asset and search for optic. And here we have the optic initialize, just like it's basically the exact same thing we've done for all the rest of these. So DA underscore optic init, and we'll just do optic because realistically, we're likely not going to have more than one of these. So anyhow, the only thing we need to worry about, because we are not we're not using a magnified optic, is that this optic mesh name matches the mesh name of the optic, which is static mesh and static mesh. That's it. We'll cover the optic scene capture component when we do the magnified optic, though, in a future video. So let's go ahead and set this to optic init, and now make our reticle settings. So reticle settings are very similar. So again, data asset, search for optic, and you will see the reticle settings. Let's create a new one, DA_reticle settings, and we'll just do underscore Amazon special. Because it's kind of unique to this optic because it has so many different reticles that it would switch between. So, starting from the top, reticle material index. So that is 0 by default. However, you can see in his, it is going to be 1 because element 1 or index 1 is the actual one that contains the reticle. Index 0 is the one that contains the body, and element 2 is the one for the glass. So we want element or index 1. So reticle material index, set it to 1, and then we can do the reticle materials. So we have 3 that we made. So 1, 2, 3. And we can go ahead and just throw them in. So the first one, I want to be let's do the center dot. Second one, I want to be the one with the outer ring. And third one, I want to be the cross. So let's just save that, go back to our red dot, and for the reticle settings, just set it to the Amazon special. So now when we hit play, we should go from having, say, the center ring to just the center dot, which we specified there. So I hit play, and there's our center dot because it overwrote it. So now that we have that set up, I'm going to very quickly show you how you can cycle between the reticles, which is super simple. So if we head to our third person character here, let's just go to the event graph. We'll copy one of the inputs, and I'm going to make it to where when I press T, we cycle the reticle. So to do that, all we need to do is get access to the current optic component. So there's 2 ways to do this, and I've mentioned them in the early on in the series, but I'm going to do it again. So shooter pawn component acts kind of like an interface to a lot of the rest of the system, and the way you can access the optic component is either one, which I don't really recommend, but it is an option, is by getting the firearm component and then getting the current optic component from there. Now this kind of setup basically is, it requires you to have a firearm setup that the optic is on. But if you were to have, say, an open world survival game where you want to be able to, say, pick up an optic and be able to look through it, as well as, say, being able to zoom in, zoom out, kind of like you could in the DayZ days, kind of like I don't know if you can still do it or not, then you're not going to want to do this because this requires you to have the optic as part of the firearm. So instead, off the shooter pawn component, just grab the current optic component. So once we have that, simply call cycle reticle. That's it. So now when we press T, we are cycling through the different reticles. I told you it was simple, and it is simple. So anyways, that is going to be all in this video for handling the red dot. The remainder of the settings are pretty self-explanatory. You can kind of tinker with them how you wish. But in the upcoming one of the videos when we do the magnified optic, we're going to expand upon this a little bit more. And likewise, when we start getting into handling the night vision, we're going to get into kind of some of the night vision settings here, which is more specific to, say, brightness and that kind of stuff. But with that said, I will see you in the next one.